Hi, I'm Andrew Fleming. I'm a reporter of the Vancouver Courier, and I'm sitting here today with our summer intern Drew McLaughlin. Drew brought a story this week that's generating a fair bit of interest. It's about longboarding. Longboarding, if you're unfamiliar with it, it's kind of like skateboarding using longer boards. It's becoming a more and more popular way to get around the city, and I believe at the Catsalano Festival this weekend, there's going to be some demonstrations on how to do it. What can you tell me about it?
Well, at the Catsalano Festival, Longboard Labs, which is a store in Kitsilano, and Land Yachts, which is a manufacturer based in North Vancouver, are closing off a block, so they'll have professional longboarders in to teach kids, proper safety, and then they're also going to have a demonstration with their skate team.
Now, of course, Vancouver bicycles are always a popular way to get around and always kind of a contentious issue. We're shutting down a number of streets, of course, so people are turning them into bike lanes. But longboards seem to occupy a bit more of a gray area. I mean, technically, I believe you're not allowed to be on the streets doing it, and you do risk a fine, and yet a lot of people are using them to get around. Is that the case? Are you familiar?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, actually in Vancouver, it's illegal to longboard on the streets. Now, a lot of people use it to commute, and right now that's not really a legal option in Vancouver. However, in North Vancouver, there are certain streets that it's legal to longboard on, and in West Vancouver, it's a similar situation. However, we're finding that a lot of longboarders are going to West Vancouver just because those laws aren't really enforced.
Now, of course, a lot of people use it to commute, and some people do it for more extreme things. For people that are unfamiliar with it, it's almost like skiing. You've got cross-country skiing and you've got downhill skiing. Cross-country skiing is more like commuting. You're just getting around. It's not as dangerous. And here in Vancouver, where it's fairly flat, it's not as big of a concern. But in North Vancouver, on the North Shore, you've got some really steep areas, and people go there for some really extreme downhill stuff. I believe they're closing off some streets, and they might be allowing it, but they're not quite sure where it's going to happen. Have you tried it yourself?
No, I haven't longboarded myself.
Well, if anyone's curious about it, if they want to go to the Catsalano Festival this weekend, there'll be some people demonstrating the safety techniques and get a hands-on approach on how to do it a bit more safely, because the last thing we want is more people getting smacked by cars zooming down the streets. Now, I confess, I'm a snowboarder. I've never really done a lot of skateboarding, and you see longboards around. They're more and more common on the street. What I find really fascinating is, you really don't seem to, there's no brakes. It's not like you have, on a bicycle where you can just squeeze the brakes and stop. Do you think it's much of a safety factor for people getting around in the city, or do you think it's something that if people know what they're doing, they can do it quite safely and within the rules of the traffic? Do you know much about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a way to do it safely. Unfortunately, since it's relatively new, not a lot of people can do it safely. Mm-hmm. So what actually Longboard Labs is trying to do is gather kind of like older skaters and mentors to kind of teach kids proper safety, because we're seeing like similar things have happened with skateboarding in the early 2000s, and now we need the same thing with longboarding.
It does seem like something that there's a safety curve. I remember in the early days of snowboarding, it was seen as this rogue rebel sport, and is no longer, they wouldn't allow it. And now, of course, it's very much mainstream. I look at the longboarders around, and they certainly seem in control. They'll be zipping down a street, and to me, it looks quite terrifying. But I guess, if you can use your feet, and they have these special gloves they can drag to slow themselves down. And the guys that really know what they're doing, they can even kind of go perpendicular or almost do like a hockey stop. But I could imagine there'd be a fair bit of resistance from the city, because if you just allow them to go anywhere, there's bound to be some fatalities. Do you know if the city's looking towards this changing the rules at all, or is it still just kind of in the limbo?
Well, a lot of communities are talking about it within their own communities. But as for citywide regulation, I'm not really sure.
I know there's been a couple of high-profile accidents recently in North Vancouver, and it's kind of interesting because a lot of kids use commute to go to school. It's just a way to get from A to B, and of course, people are always trying to encourage youth just to get more active, because kids are getting really fat these days, and they're saying, look, we are being active. We're going to work on our skateboards. If you ban this for us, it's not going to be a very effective way. So I think it's going to be an ongoing situation. I don't think this sport is going to be going away anytime soon. But for viewers out there now who want to get a better idea of what we're talking about, we're just going to cut to a video now that people explain how the ins and outs of the sport of longboarding. Check it out.
Hi, I'm Blake Startup. You may remember me from such longboarding films as the Land Yachts A-Team episodes and other random appearances on videos throughout the internet. I'm here today to talk to you about safety. Your board's made up of three main parts. You've got your deck, your trucks, and your wheels. All of these factors need to be operating properly to have your board riding safe. First thing to check is that your wheels are on snug. They're not rolling off, they're not flipping around. All your nuts on the end here are securely fastened.
Check your nuts.
That way your wheel's not going to fall off. That's kind of key. So you want to make sure you give your board a once-over every time you stand on it. It's going to keep you safe, it's a smart thing to do, and it takes like 2 seconds. Whenever you leave your house to go longboarding, you never want to do it without safety equipment. Safety! Your number one most important piece of safety equipment is your helmet. You want to make sure it fits nice and snug, it's comfortable on your head, and it's cool enough in looks that you're actually going to want to wear it. When you're putting your helmet on, you want to make sure your chin strap, you hear the snap, and that it's snug enough that your helmet's not actually going to fall off your head. Your next piece of safety equipment should be your gloves. These are going to save your hands because they're inevitably going to end up on the pavement. So when we're riding on the roads, we need to follow the rules of the roads. The cars that we're sharing roads with, they're following the rules, so that means that we need to as well. For riding our board safely, it's best if we start right with the basics, as far as the first time you stand on your board. When we start boarding, we want to make sure that we've got our feet in a really comfortable place and a comfortable position. If you're going to ride a longboard, you need to know how to stop it. The most efficient way to do this is what's called foot braking. So what foot braking is actually removing our foot from the skateboard and placing it on the pavement to create friction that's going to slow us down. Foot brake! The best way to do this is to keep your front foot on the board and remove your rear foot and place it gently on the pavement to create that friction. If you think you need to foot brake, do it right away while your speeds are lower and you're under more control of your board. The longer you wait, the harder it is to foot brake. Another really good way to keep your speed under control is through carving. And what carving is really hard turns across the fall line of a hill, scrubbing your wheels to keep your speed down. Now, what the fall line of the hill is basically the most direct line from the top to the bottom. So long as you're turning nice and hard and cutting across that, you're going to feel your wheels fighting the road and dumping speed off. So another great way to slow ourselves down or even stop is actually sliding, which is where we're breaking our wheels loose of the pavement, throwing the skateboard sideways, using the friction created by the wheels to bring us to a stop. Friction! Reason you might want to do this is it's a really efficient way to stop. Also, it's going to save the soles of your shoes, so you don't have to buy as many pairs of shoes. So what we have to do to slide to stop is we're going to have to get nice and low on our board and close to the ground. We're actually going to have to take one of our hands and put it on the ground to take some weight off of our wheels. We're going to be using our other hand to hold firmly onto the board and help us turn the board nice and tight by pulling up a little bit on the rail of the board. Grab rail! So with our rear leg, what we want to do is actually fold our back knee forwards to create a pocket in front of our back foot that we can put our hand on the board. That gives us a nice little spot to grab the board so we can get the leverage we need to pull against the board to anchor us so we can lean back and put weight on our hand. So we're putting our hand on the ground about the same time that we start to really crank the board for a nice hard turn. And what we're going to do is as we grab the board with our back hand and lean off to put our hand on the ground, what we're doing is we're taking weight off of our wheels and putting it in our hand. And if we time that nicely with the turn, so we actually push a little bit on the back foot, that's going to release the board from the pavement and allow it to start sliding. You want to focus on something that's down at the bottom of the hill that's directly in your eye line and keep an eye on that, and that's actually going to help keep you in a straight line. So another good way to shut down our speed, not only using our heel side turns, is to actually doing our toe side turns, where we're doing almost a push-up on the pavement. This one's a little bit easier to initiate than the heel side one, but it's just as effective, but it's a little bit harder to see what's going on behind you. So you definitely want to learn how to do both ways. So like our heel side slides, we need to get nice and low before we do this, but unlike that heel side, we're going to put both hands on the pavement. We're going to get low, reach off the board, and put our hands down. This one's a little bit easier because you can actually push both of your feet away from you to help release the wheels from the pavement. So sliding is not only a good way to stop, it's a great way to control your speed. Throwing a slide or a pendulum while moving allows you to scrub off some speed and keep rolling. Riding safely is an essential part of longboarding. Learning how to stop and control your speed will ensure you have a better time skating. Ride safe and have fun.
感谢收看今天的大温故事，我们下期再见。